Hi guys, this is Michelle from Deception Bites, and we're going to continue on from where we left off in the last video, which was part 5. This is going to be part 6, obviously. And just so you know who you're talking to, that's me, woohoo! And this is my book. It's actually, if you want more information about Dominionism or Luciferian doctrine, what it is, then that would be a good resource. Of course, there are others, but that's one. It's available on Amazon, and it's also available as an ebook. Okay, we've got a lot in just one post, and I know that that one post is going to take up an entire video because it's huge, and it took me a long time to research it, but and forgive my voice, I'm a little bit gravelly today. I've been doing a lot of speaking on these videos the last couple days. So, okay, this is Q's post from November 3rd. And again, this is going to be the only one we cover in this video because it's freaking huge and there's a lot of stuff to go over. So, let's just jump right into it. He asks, where is John Podesta? Now, I say he because I assume that Q is a he. I don't know. It's believed that it's either Trump or someone very, very close to him, and it would appear that way. But again, we have to consider everything. We have to consider that it may not be. So let's go. Where is John Podesta? Where is Tony Podesta? Did one or both escape the country and was let out? Where is Barack Obama? Where was Barack Obama yesterday? Now, this is November 3rd, so let's just stop there and just go over these that we have so far. Yesterday, which to him right there would have been November 2nd, Barack Obama was at a training day in Boston, and it was something to do with his foundation, and there was like 150 leaders that were planning to make their communities better. So that's where he was. He was in Boston. Now, where he was on November 3, I can't find. I would assume that he would still be in Boston, but I don't want to assume that because I don't know. So if anyone knows the answer to that, they can put it below. And in terms of John and Tony Podesta, there is so much on this one thread. Okay, so on, this story that I got here was written on the 4th, and it said, the biggest story yesterday, the one that has the Dems in a dither, is Podesta running from his firm, tweeted the President of the United States on Tuesday morning. What did he know about crooked Dems is forgive me, I just took a Tylenol 3 because I have like a splitting headache, so if it gets too bad and I keep messing up, I'll just shut it off and wait to record this until a later time, but bear with me for the moment. That should either be what he knows or what he knew, but about crooked Dems is earth-shattering. He and his brother could drain the swamp, which would be yet another campaign promise fulfilled. Fake News Week. What exactly is President Donald Trump talking about? Podesta, wait, isn't that the guy who ran Hillary Clinton's campaign? Yes, it is. Is this controversy as big a deal as Trump says it is? Yeah, I think it is. Start here. Tony Podesta, the guy with the lobbying firm, is the brother of John Podesta, who was chairman of Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign, chief of staff to the then president, Bill Clinton, and a major player in Democratic political and policy circle for decades. As John rose up the ranks of Democratic politics, Tony was following a similar ascent in the world of political influence, emerging as one of the most powerful Democratic lobbyists and biggest party donors in Washington. So that is the Podestas, and I think honestly you would have to have been living under a rock to not know who the Podestas are, because there's been this huge thing about, I think it was John Podesta and his, well, we'll get into that, about his pedophile dealings and so forth. So, Special Counsel Robert Mueller's grand jury is investigating a prominent Democratic lobbyist and a former GOP congressman for their involvement in an influence campaign on behalf of Ukrainian interests tied to Paul Manafort, a person with direct knowledge of the investigation, tells the Associated Press. At the center of the widening probe are Tony Podesta, a longtime Democratic operative, and Vin Weber, a former GOP congressman and leader of his own high-powered lobbying firm, Mercury LLC. The two men were hired as part of a multi-million-dollar lobbying effort directed by Manafort and longtime associate Rick Gates. With the emphasis on the Ukrainian lobbying efforts, Mueller's criminal probe is moving beyond investigating ties between the Trump campaign and Russia, and is aggressively pursuing people who worked as foreign assets without registering with the Justice Department. More witnesses are expected before the grand jury in coming weeks. Now, as I go through these, you're going to get a bigger picture, like a broader picture of what's happening here. So here's something else. Now, I am going to have to go out to the internet for this, and keep in mind that my computer is, if it was any slower, it'd be backing up. Let's just put it that way. My last computer died on me, and I went out and I bought a new computer, but I didn't get enough RAM put in, and that is what the issue is. I was trying to save money. You get what you pay for. So, I found this interesting, and this is going to be really interesting. So I'm going to end up reading it to you because it's really interesting. There is a rumor circulating in the alternative media that Tony Podesta has been indicted, but that the indictment is sealed. An indictment is a formal accusation that a person has committed a crime, typically made by a grand jury. A sealed indictment is an indictment that stays non-public until it is unsealed when the named person is arrested. Normally, I don't post rumors, but this rumor is too important to ignore, so I'll just present the rumor and leave it to you to decide on its credibility. And I'm merely doing the same thing. I believe that it's credible, I believe that it's true, but you can make up your own mind. To begin, Tony Podesta is the brother of powerful Clinton operative John Podesta, who was the chair of Hillary Clinton's failed presidential campaign. A powerful Democratic lobbyist in his own right, Tony Podesta was ranked 23rd most powerful person in Washington, D.C. by GQ magazine in 2012. Both Tony and John Podesta were invited by satanic artist Marina Abramovic, I think that's how you pronounce her last name, to a spirit cooking dinner in which human menstrual blood, breast milk, urine, and sperm are ingested. I'm sorry for those of you that have a weak stomach. I just lost myself. Okay. Tony Podesta is also known for his gruesome art collection, including a sculpture, The Ark of Hysteria, which mimics the posture that cannibal serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer had positioned one of his victims. And again, I'm sorry for even showing that, but I think it's important that you see that, okay, this is in Tony Podesta's house, okay? And it's showing this, the Ark of Ecstasy, and that is the same position that Jeffrey Dahmer left one of his victims. And you can tell it's the same thing because the person doesn't have a head, and this person doesn't have a head. So it's obviously mimicking that. Now, why anybody would want to have that in their home is beyond me. That's just, it's incredible. And it says here on the bottom of this picture, I don't know if you can see this, but it says Jeffrey Dahmer loved to take Polaroids of his victims in strange poses after he had killed them. I suppose these were his trophies, in addition to the body parts he kept in the fridge. This person found himself to be quite the contortionist in death. Practical Homicide Investigation by Vernon J. Geberth, CRC. Okay, so let's move on. And this is Heather and Tony Podesta in their Falls Church home with Louise, I'm not sure how to pronounce that last name. And it's called The Arch of Hysteria. That appeared in the Washington Post. A lot of you are aware of this already, but for those of you who aren't, it's very important. The rumors and speculation began when NBC News reported on October 23, 2017, that Tony Podesta and the Podesta Group are now the subject of federal criminal investigation being led by Special Counsel Robert Mueller on whether the group violated the Foreign Agents Registration Act. On the 31st, 2017, Emily Zanotti of Daily Wire reported that eagle-eyed court watchers on Twitter noticed late Monday that there are 4 sealed cases listed on the U.S. District Court docket in Washington, D.C., located on the docket between George Papadopoulos, sealed plea bargain number 182, and Paul Manafort sealed indictment number 201. Legal experts immediately concluded that the 4 sealed cases could mean Special Counsel Robert Mueller isn't done issuing secret subpoenas and grand jury indictments. After yesterday's wave of charges snagging Manafort and his business partner, Rick Gates, and revealing that former Trump foreign policy aide Papadopoulos struck a deal with federal prosecutors, D.C. watchdogs, particularly on the left, assumed we were only beginning to see what Mueller had in store. There is one indication that Mueller has at least one more indictment up his sleeve. The Manafort indictment is marked as Indictment B, which presumes there is an Indictment A lurking somewhere, maybe in a sealed document number 200. The subject of that indictment is anyone's guess. It could be Flynn or it could be Tony Podesta, who hinted in his resignation letter yesterday that he was under scrutiny. Indeed, NBC News confirmed on November 1st, 2017, that the Podesta Group is the unnamed Company B listed in Mueller's, Manafort, and Gates indictments. The lobbying firms that the Podesta Group and Mercury Public Affairs are the unnamed companies in the grand jury indictment of former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort and his deputy Rick Gates, according to 3 sources with knowledge of the investigation. The indictment, unsealed Monday, refers to Company A and Company B as the firms Manafort and Gates solicited in 2012 to lobby on behalf of the Ukrainian government. Company A is Mercury Public Affairs and Company B is the Podesta Group, the sources said. According to the indictment, the lobbying firms were paid $2 million from offshore accounts controlled by Manafort. On November 3rd, which is the day we're at right now, in terms of Q's posts anyway, James Brower, who describes himself as a former state assistant for Trump in Massachusetts, tweeted, "Scoop, Tony Podesta is one of the sealed indictments." Browser followed that with another tweet on November 4th at 11:08 a.m. There are a total of 7 sealed indictments. 1 was Manafort. 2nd is Podesta. Okay. Immunity deals were struck with Tony Podesta. What this means, I'm not sure, but that's the latest that I've heard regarding Podesta. Also on November 3rd, an anonymous tipster posted this on the 4chan message board. And of course, that's the same message board that Q is posting on. Tony Podesta is in custody, still awaiting John to turn himself in. Has not hit the news yet, but it is coming soon. Protecting Mr. Trump is more important. They both were stopped via their passports from leaving the country. Tony soon after turned himself in. No sign of John, but heard he will do it tonight. But it's already 1:40 a.m. Does it matter where I get my info? You will find out in the next few hours if John fails to turn himself in. He will be on the news and radio to prevent fleeing. Okay. And Terms of surrender was media blackout. Podesta's lawyers are pleading Mueller for indictment to remain sealed. No leaks by mainstream media because of loyalty, I presume, because Mueller team can't keep their mouths shut with anyone relating to Trump. Can you find Tony Podesta? Look hard. There are records. Truth is the only way. Excuse me, I'm just going to take a drink because my throat's really dry. All right. Which then led to this claim on VOAT. I'm really not sure what that is, but this was on November 4th. Trump and military have been planning the Second American Revolution, but instead of the British, this time they'll be fighting the CIA, FBI, NSA, Deep State, and all their puppet actors and hired goons to take back control of the country. Trump has gone to Asia for the next 12 days and is being protected by the Air Force and Navy in classified locations while the military takes over in America. North Korea is just a false flag. They're controlled by the CIA. Mainstream media is controlled by the CIA. We knew that. We knew that the mainstream media was controlled by the CIA, and actually somebody sent me something saying that North Korea was controlled by the CIA, so this is just confirming that. KKK and terrorist organizations in this country are aided by the FBI plus CIA. Every branch of the government, every organization is helplessly corrupt and compromised except for one, the military. The Constitution gave full control of the military to the president for a reason, to deal with any branches of government that became too powerful. Antifa is a false flag. Well, we knew that. The military has already infiltrated them to gather intel. They won't be a threat. Soros, Obama, Clinton's, Podesta, etc. will all be BTFO. Not sure what that means. I'm not a really avid texter though, so probably everybody right now is laughing at me and saying, how can she not know that? I hate texting. Proof. Q-Anon predicted POTUS Twitter would go down temporarily and that they'd get it back up. Q-Anon mentioned more info would come out shortly. Final JFK file drop released today. Also predicted information of Podesta's indictment would be today, actionable tomorrow. Huma is indicted Monday. There are more predictions QAnon got right, not just those. The biggest nugget of proof will be if Trump tweets out this exact message. My fellow Americans, the storm is upon us. If he tweets out this exact message, that'll be the green light for Operation Alice in Wonderland. Well, that's interesting. You know what? I just passed over that when I was reading this, but that's interesting because I did question that, and I asked, are any of you aware that he tweeted that? And I could not find it in any of his tweets, but apparently this is the green light for Operation Alice in Wonderland. So I'm not exactly sure what that operation is, but I would assume it's all related. So I purchased a 5-day membership at Search Quarry and searched for an arrest record for Anthony Podesta in the District of Columbia. The search result says there's no such arrest record of Anthony Podesta in D.C. as of 11/4/2017. Please pray for our country. Pray for America. Pray for the good guys. Pray for the light. That's an interesting picture someone has taken, and probably not without, I've got one of my undergrad degrees is in graphic arts, and I'm an avid photographer, and none of these pictures taken are ever taken by accident. There's been times when they'll take a picture and it looks like there's two things sticking up from their head and it's in the background. None of that's by accident. So this picture with Trump with two wings behind him, it was not taken by accident, I can assure you. Update, November 5, afternoon. The Q-Anonymous, who's been posting on 4chan, clearly knows what he's talking about. Below are his 4chan posts from October 31st to this morning. You can also see below as a separate page. Okay, we have gone through these, so I don't think that that's necessary because we've been going through all these, but I did find this post very interesting, and it's on a website. I've never been to this website before. I don't know anything about it, but it's called Fellowship of the Minds. In a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. Can't remember who actually said that, but it's a very famous quote. Okay, so let's go back to where we were. Hopefully that filled in a lot of gaps there for you, as it did me. Okay, here's another one we have to go out to the internet for, and I do apologize. Somebody was nice enough to send me a message saying, we don't mind waiting. Okay. Now, this I've heard before, and I happen to think that it's just highly suspicious. Remember the whole thing about Madeline McCaan going missing? And there was just a lot of strange things surrounding that case. Well, interestingly enough, at the time she was missing, Tony and John Podesta were in that area. And look at the police sketches of the two men that they say kidnapped her. There's one, there's the other. This is the police suspect sketch. Did you notice anything? Now, if they were in the States at that time, I would say, okay, yeah, it's a big coincidence, but they weren't. So it's extremely interesting. We definitely know that they're tied to pedophile ring. Breaking bombshell. Multiple reports tie Clinton Podesta brothers to child abduction case of Madeline McCaan. Holy smokes, before you read this, please take a deep breath and sit down, as the information is chilling, and it most certainly is. To proceed with the appropriate caution, this story is developing and there's not yet confirmation, yet these reports are 100% accurate and will yield a conviction, but take a look at the circumstantial evidence and decide for yourself. Now, the other thing that's interesting is, let me get rid of this because it's distracting me. The other thing that's interesting is this came out quite a while ago, but nobody, paid any attention to it. So it's interesting that it's now coming back up again, as it should. On Sunday evening, side-by-side images of Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, John Podesta, and his brother Tony, next to police sketches of potential suspects in a 2007 kidnapping of 3-year-old girl, took over the internet. And whoever this person is, Leah, the boss, I'm not a huge conspiracy theorist, but yeah, I think that we could all say that. And the resemblance is striking. And Reddit, 4chan, and Twitter rapidly took up the case. Madeline Beth McCaan should have celebrated her 13th birthday with her family in England this year, but she vanished from her bed during a family vacation to Portugal in 2003. The case gripped the entire world, becoming one of the most high-profile missing persons cases in history. Coverage of her kidnapping was comparable to the press interest in the death of Diana. Should be murder of Diana, but anyway. So I think that that's interesting, and I think that was worth the little side trip for. I'm sorry if this appears to some that I am going on rabbit trails. I'm not. It's all related. Okay. So that was that one, and again, we're going to have to go out to the internet. It's a little bit faster today, though. Okay, and this is by Donald Hughes. I'm actually not sure who this Donald Hughes is, but anyway, he puts at Fox News, any validity to this from 4chan 2 hours ago? Tony Podesta is in custody, still waiting John to turn himself in. So we've seen this actually. Just seeing if there was another reason why I put that. There might have been another reason why I put this up there, but no, I guess not. Sorry, didn't mean to give you the same information twice. I guess it's better than not giving it at all. Okay, now, so this is the whole John and Tony Podesta thing, and I think you're probably up to speed on that now if you weren't already. I think yeah, okay, so I think that we've got this. Just making sure I got everything. Now, where's Barack Obama? Okay, I'm not sure where he was on that date, which was November 3rd, but where was he yesterday? He was in Boston at the his own foundation meeting, and there was 150 citizen leaders planning to make their communities better. What is the difference between commercial and private regarding security clearance for departure? Now, this is interesting. I didn't realize this. Okay, just want to make sure I'm giving it to you in order. Except in very specific situations, you are not generally required to go through security at many smaller general aviation airports. Security is almost non-existent, or at the very least, they are not checking passengers and their luggage. Now, this is in reference to private airplane. If you have a private airplane, you're not going to go through the same, security clearance that others would have to get on a commercial airplane. And I guess their reasoning is that if you're the pilot, you're not going to hijack your own plane and whatever. But I still think that this is a little bit silly, because you could be smuggling drugs or guns or whatever, but for whatever reason, they don't do the same security checks. So, except in very specific situations, you are not generally required to go through security, and at many smaller general aviation airports, airport security is almost non-existent, or at the very least, they are not checking passengers and their luggage. If the police have a reason to suspect that something illegal is taking place, they have reasonable cause, then they can search the airplane. But again, much like in your car, this doesn't usually happen. International flights are a very different matter, though, and the airplane crew, passengers, and luggage must all clear customs at departure and arrival airports, where they will be inspected. Now, that makes sense. That makes total sense. Okay, now let's go on to the next one. Okay, he asks, who is the TSA head? So the TSA head, the current, is David Pekoske, and he was confirmed by the U.S. Senate as the Transportation Security Administration's 7th administrator in August 2017. Before joining the TSA, Pekoske was an executive in the government services industry, where he led teams that provided counterterrorism, security, and intelligence support services to government agencies. Most notably, Pekoske served as the 26th Vice Commandant of the U.S. Coast Guard, culminating a Coast Guard career that included extensive operation and command experience. That's really not that important, but I just threw that stuff in there just so you'd know. Former head Peter V. Neffinger, born 1955, was the administrator of the Transportation Security Administration from July 2005 till his statutory required resignation on January 20, 2017, upon Donald Trump becoming president. So the current one is David Pekoske. What party did he contribute to? And he contributed to the Democrats. What is of particular interest when researching? Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what he's exactly alluding to there. But I'll go over some of this other stuff, and because I'm sure that the answer is in here. I'm just not exactly sure what answer he's looking for. Okay, the Transportation Security Administration is an agency of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security that has authority over the security of the traveling public in the United States. It was created as a response to the September 11, 2001 attacks. Chiefly concerned with air travel, the TSA employs screening officers in airports, armed federal air marshals on planes, and mobile teams of dog handlers and explosive specialists. I'm not a fan of the TSA, and for good reason. I mean, I know that they are necessary, but they creeped me out one time because I was traveling from Louisiana, and at that time there wasn't a direct flight, so I used to transfer at usually Charlotte, and so I would transfer at Charlotte. Well, the one time I got a ticket and it was cheaper for me to transfer in Atlanta, so I went to Atlanta, and TSA said to me, "Oh, you're traveling, or you're transferring in Atlanta today," and I said yes, and they said, "Well, you usually transfer in Charlotte." Well, I was just about floored. They knew my whole travel history. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised at that, but it just really took me off guard. It really did. And I thought, oh my gosh, they know that this is not my usual place of transfer. Like, just an interesting thing I threw in there, but okay, just read that. Okay, now he says, what updated post 9/11 protocols were put in place to prevent, stop, inbound, outbound sea level targets? Now, a sea level target is, and sea level is an adjective used to describe high-ranking executive titles within an organization. The letter C in this context stands for chief. Officers who hold C-level positions are typically considered the most powerful and influential members of an organization. Consequently, these executives set the company's strategy, make higher stakes decisions, and ensure that the day-to-day operations align with fulfilling the company's strategic goals. So in respects to the government, they would be high-level targets, so to speak. So what updated 9/11 protocols were put in place to prevent, stop, inbound, outbound, sea-level targets? I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure what protocol that he is speaking about, but I know that there were many put into place, and I'm just going to take a drink again. Sorry. Excuse me, but my throat is so dry. Okay. Now he asks, what local airports are in close proximity to DC? Now we're getting into something very, very interesting here, if you don't already know it, and you may. Okay, there are 3 major airports in the Washington, D.C. region. There's Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. That's the only one that I've ever flown into in Washington, but and their airport code is DCA. And then there's the Washington Dulles International Airport, airport code IAD, not that that matters, and Baltimore Washington International Thurgood Marshall Airport, and that is airport code BWI. I have sometimes transferred planes in Washington at the Ronald Reagan Airport. Not that that has anything to do with anything. But, okay. Now, what happened shortly after 9/11, specifically with all aircraft? Well, they were grounded. Now, I remember I was up in the mountains in North Carolina at that time, and I was babysitting for my pastor and his wife, their children, because they were in Texas at a speaking engagement. And it happened that day just as they were about to board their plane, and of course everything was shut down, and it was just a nightmare for them. And I remember them calling and talking to the kids and saying they were going to try and get a vehicle out, but it was not that easy because everybody was trying to do that. It left a lot of people in some very difficult situations. And also, I don't know if you've ever heard this story, but in Gander, Newfoundland, a lot of the planes that were, the overseas planes that were headed to the States were grounded in Gander, Newfoundland. And there's actually a book about that is really, really a good book. It's, I can't even remember the name of it. I think it's The Day the World Came to Town. But look up on the internet how the residents of this little community in Gander, Newfoundland treated these people that were all stranded there for quite some time. So it just a an interesting aside. I'm sorry that I'm getting off on rabbit trails, but so all the planes were grounded. We know this. Nobody had authorization to land or to leave, or did they? Or did they? Who was authorized to depart? And that would be bin Laden's family. And as Q says, only one plane was authorized during this mandatory forced grounding. And he's correct. And it was the plane that took bin Laden's family to safety. So I'm going to see where okay, I think it's this one. And this was, cannot download the information you requested. Well, why the heck not? Of course. Come on. No, are you serious? I was just there. I was just at this. And it's not going to let me go there. Isn't that interesting? Anyway, well, this article was from globalresearch.ca/bin Laden family members evacuated from U.S. in wake of the 9/11 attacks. So if you want to follow this, maybe you are able to pull it up. I'm not able to right now, and I'm really not sure why, but it's got some really, really fascinating information. And apparently this plane was authorized by George W. Bush, and it left from Los Angeles. It made 3 stops, one of which was Washington Dulles, and I can't remember. There were 3 stops anyway to pick up different people, different members of his family, and they were flown to safety. So now, if you go to Snopes, they're going to tell you that this is just, made up. It's not. I mean, it's appeared so many credible places. It did happen. It happened. And the other thing was, bin Laden was a CIA operative. And for that matter, so was, the president of Iraq, Saddam Hussein. He was a CIA operative. Yep, sure was. So, what airport did the departure take place at? I'm not sure the exact airport. All I know is that it was in Los Angeles. Why is this relevant? I don't know. I think I heard that there was an airport, that the airport that Podesta took off from was in Los Angeles, but I can't find that again. I can't find it. So I don't know if information is disappearing out there or not, but I had clearly had that information and it's gone. So, but I'm almost 100% sure that it was Los Angeles. How does it tie together? Well, I think someone tipped Podesta off, and just like someone got bin Laden's family out of danger, someone was trying to get Podesta out of danger because they knew that he was going to be indicted. Podesta's plane has military escort, i.e. tag, and is being diverted, forced down. So Q is saying that Podesta tried to flee, and his plane had a military escort, and it's pretty obvious that Trump is in control of the military right now, so that would make sense. And then he said, short delay. And then Q said, this will be leaked. Watch the news. Have faith. Now, okay, so that is that. I really wish that I could have gone to that website, but I can't, so I'll stop mourning it. Now, this is another thing. The plane, a 727 owned by DB Air and operated by Ryan International, began its flight in Los Angeles. Okay, this is the one. This is bin Laden's plane that they're talking about. The plane, a 727 owned by DB Air and operated by Ryan International, began its flight in Los Angeles and made stops in Orlando, Dulles International Airport, and Boston before continuing to Gander, Newfoundland, Paris, Geneva, and Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. The aircraft tail number N521DB has been chartered frequently by the White House for the press corps traveling with President Bush. Oh, isn't that interesting? One passenger, Omar Awad bin Laden, a nephew of the Al-Qaeda leader, has been investigated by the FBI because he had lived with Abdullah bin Laden, a leader of the World Assembly of Muslim Youth, which the FBI suspected of being a terrorist organization. Sure, let him go. Go on. We don't need to question him. Unbelievable. Do you not find this unbelievable? I mean, if it were not a fact, I wouldn't believe it. Well, I guess that makes sense, doesn't it? If it wasn't a fact, nobody would believe it. Okay, now, let's go on. What fake news anchor will not be on air tonight? Well, that would be, and this, again, was November 3rd, that would be Megyn Kelly. Why is this relevant? Well, she was at war with Trump, so to speak. I think everybody knows that. What was stated in the past? Well, that there's CIA agents in the media. So is he saying that she was one of them? It would not surprise me, especially due to her rabid hatred of Trump. So, I don't know. Where did the $18 billion from Soros go? Well, interestingly enough, he transferred this money to his nonprofit organization. Why? Well, I think that's obvious. Less visibility, less accountability, easier to launder. Can it be used by bad actors to escape bribes, rogue contractors, etc.? Certainly. And was part of this given to Hillary to run? I don't know. And then he says slush fund. So would some of this go into a slush fund? Probably. Especially after knowing what they're using the slush funds for. What did the U.S. government seize, stop, track? Oh, did the U.S. government seize, stop, track other slush funds that prevent or risk or create? I apologize. I don't know what's wrong with it's like the first day with the new mouth or something. I don't know. Did the U.S. government seize, stop, track other slush funds that prevent or create risk to operate? Yes. And Attorney General Jeff Sessions just shut down an Obama-era slush fund. So, yeah. And I think this is, that's about him transferring this money. The financier, George Soros, has transferred about $18 billion to his Human Rights Foundation, bringing his lifetime giving to $32 billion and making the foundation one of the world's largest. The donation makes Soros' Open Society Foundation the third largest charitable foundation in the world, behind Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Wellcome Trust. Officials from the foundation told the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times that the Hungarian-born investor has increased the pace of donations from the proceeds of his successful hedge fund. The latest combined donations of $18 billion represent the bulk of Soros' estimated fortune of $32 billion. Open Society works globally to build vibrant and tolerant democracies and has given away nearly $14 billion since it was founded in 1979. So there you go. Now, this is one doozy of a post. Anyway, did Jared Kushner travel to Saudi Arabia recently? Why, yes, he did, at the end of October. What is Saudi Arabia known for? I'm not sure what Q is looking for here in the way of answer. I really don't. I don't know. I said oil, blood money, I don't know. And if you don't know what blood money is, it's interesting. I don't know if this has anything to do with what he's talking about, but blood money is a system for criminals to compensate their victims' families financially. Doing so allows the person that committed the crime to be let off from normal criminal justice. It's a formalized way of buying one's freedom. Diya even, I guess that's what it's called, Diya even applies in cases of murder. The country's judicial authority sets how much money should be paid for a crime and kicked prices up a notch in 2011. You now need to pay around $106,000 to avoid punishment for premeditated murder. We should mention that that number is for killing a man. You can half that amount and get away with killing a woman. Well, that's not surprising, is it? Anyway, I'm not even sure if that's what he's referring to. Probably not. But then he asks, where do the biggest donations originate from? And I would say Saudi Arabia, because the Saudi Fund was set up by royal decree in October 1974 to stimulate economic growth in developing nations. In the next 4 years, it gave soft loans totaling $3.1 billion to 51 countries, many of them with the lowest per capita income brackets in the world. Almost 60% of approved loans earmarked for transport, power, and water projects. In 1979, the fund accounted for about 30% of the kingdom's foreign economic aid. So I would say that a large part of donations originate from there. Why is this relevant? I don't know. I'm not exactly sure why it's relevant. I mean, I could say a million reasons, but I don't know what reason that Q is looking for. What else is relevant with Saudi Arabia? And oh yes, this is interesting as well. Saudi Arabia is one of the largest providers of aid to the Palestinian people. Since 2002, Saudi Arabia has given more than $480 million in monetary support to the Palestinian Authority and has supported Palestinian refugees by contributing to the UN Relief and Works Agency. Through the Arab League, it has provided more than $250 million for the Palestinians and pledged $500 million in assistance over the next 3 years at the Donors Conference in December 2007. Like aid from other nations, Saudi Arabian aid to Palestine was not disrupted by the election of Hamas. So, I think we've got, and this is about Kushner's trip to Saudi Arabia. Kushner was accompanied in the region by Deputy Security. Let me start that again. Kushner was accompanied in the region by Deputy National Security Advisor Dina Powell and Middle East envoy Jason Greenblatt. Greenblatt continued from Saudi Arabia to Amman, Jordan, Cairo, the West Bank, city of Ramallah, and Jerusalem, where he was on Sunday. The Trump administration has said its strategy is to try to draw in neighboring Arab leaders to play a role in Middle East peace. Jared has always been driven to try and solve the Israeli-Palestinian dispute, said billionaire real estate investor Tom Barrack, a longtime friend and close Trump confidant. The key to solving that dispute is Egypt, and the key to Egypt is Abu Dhabi and Saudi Arabia. Interesting. So he says, what else is relevant with Saudi Arabia? Well, I'd say that's relevant. I'm not sure that that's the answer he was looking for, but I'd say it's relevant. Safe harbor, port of transfer, probably. I don't know. Does anyone know that? Does anyone know the answer to that? Safe harbor, port of transfer. I think he's probably saying that it is. Otherwise, he wouldn't be asking those questions. That would be my understanding, but my understanding may not always be right. So that's why it takes all of us. It takes all of us looking at this stuff to decipher and decode and to fill in the dots. Okay. Or to connect the dots, rather. We don't really fill them in. Okay. Ooh, we're getting to the end of this. Why was there a recent smear campaign against Jared Kushner and POTUS? Well, I would say that the Senate Judiciary Chairman, Chuck Grassley, and Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein are both calling on Jared Kushner to provide additional documents to the committee, accusing him of handing over incomplete information related to their Russia probe. From this October trip to Saudi Arabia to leading a little-known White House innovation group, Kushner is certainly involved in many aspects of President Trump's administration. But he's also wrapped up in an ongoing investigation into alleged Russian interference in the very election that got his father-in-law elected. So I'm not sure if that's exactly what he's talking about, but it may be. Why is the timing important? I'm not sure why it's important, but it is. I mean, obviously, if Jared just went to Saudi Arabia and now this smear campaign is coming out, then I would say that the timing is very important. Who released the article? As far as I know, it was Breitbart. As far as I know. If anyone knows any differently, please let me know in the comments below. And the Council of Wizards and Warlocks cannot be defeated. Now, now I know that the Wizards and Warlocks is the NSA. I was kind of questioning that. I didn't understand, but apparently in the Snowden movie, they reference the NSA as Wizards and Warlocks. So, the Council of Wizards and Warlocks cannot be defeated. Nice view up here, Q. Now, he's saying nice view up here because he's on Air Force One at that time on his trip to Asia. And somebody told me, and I can't remember, and please, if anyone knows the answer to this, you can put it in the comments below. Someone said that he posted a picture of up there, like this Q person posted a picture, and that somebody looked at the encoding in the actual picture and it was taken over Asia. So I don't know if that's true. Again, I saw that information briefly, but I can't find it now. So if anyone knows, please let me know. And we're going to cut it off there because I have been talking for quite a while just on this one post. So I don't really want to go on from there because there's just so much there that I think that in and of itself is enough for this one. So thank you very much. If you like, please subscribe, and if you enjoy these, why not buy me a coffee? I could really use one. I will talk to you guys later, and hopefully I'll get another one done this evening. I'm not sure, but hope you have a good night.